All right, let's just jump right in. Today, we're looking at a source that makes a pretty huge promise. We're talking about the blueprints for a homestead that supposedly waters itself, costs next to nothing to run, and, get this, it's all based on forgotten ancient knowledge.
Just let that sink in for a second. 60 years. That's the first thing this source hits you with. The idea of a garden that you haven't had to water with a hose for 60 years? I mean, how can you not stop and think about that?
So yeah, the obvious question is, how is that even possible? Well, according to this text, it has nothing to do with modern tech. It's about rediscovering what they call a glitch in the Earth's physics, something ancient engineers, especially the Romans, apparently had all figured out. So let's unpack exactly what that means. Okay, so this first part is all about that big promise, right? The 60-year garden. And the source is really clear on this point. None of this is supposed to be a new invention. The idea is that these are systems that have been around forever. Systems that families apparently used to support themselves for centuries, way before we had anything like our modern world. And what I find interesting here is the problem they're setting up. The source makes the argument that, our modern gardening techniques, they just completely fall apart during a drought. But this ancient Roman system, it was supposedly engineered to make that whole problem just go away. All right, let's get into the nitty-gritty. Blueprint number 1, infinite water. You gotta start with water, right? It's the most crucial part. The source calls this the infinite water blueprint, and it's basically the foundation that the entire rest of the system is built on.
So the first piece of this puzzle is what they call a self-refilling reservoir. And the idea behind it is actually pretty straightforward. You bury some specific porous materials, stuff that's easy to get, and you create this sort of underground water loop. Then you just let nature do the work. Gravity and capillary action handle the rest.
And here's why that matters. This isn't about just spraying water on top of the ground where most of it just evaporates, right? No. This system is supposed to mimic a natural aquifer. It keeps the water locked underground, feeding the roots directly. It's just a way more efficient way of doing things, according to the source. Okay, but wait. How do you get water into this system in the first place, especially if you don't want to use a pump and pay for electricity? Well, the source has an answer for that. It points to this thing called a zero-energy water pump. It's an old Roman invention that, believe it or not, uses the pressure of the water itself to move it uphill. No electricity needed. And the numbers here are just wow. The claim is that when you put these two things together, that reservoir and the pump, you can harvest up to 70,000 liters of water a year for free. No ongoing energy costs. It's a massive claim. Okay, so you've got your water supply figured out. That's huge. But what about the garden itself? How do you actually build it to take advantage of all that water? That brings us to the second blueprint, the physical structure of the garden. And this is where the source really challenges some modern ideas. A lot of people love raised beds, right? Well, this text says, nope, they dry out way too fast and they're way more work. The alternative? An 800-year-old method of digging what they call sun-trap pits. The idea is that these pits create their own little microclimate that traps both moisture and heat. And you know what they call this? The lazy garden. And for good reason. The whole point is that you do the engineering work up front, and then the system basically runs itself for like 20 years. The structure is doing all the heavy lifting for you. But wait, there's more. You could have all the water in the world and the perfect garden structure, but according to this source, it's all for nothing if your soil is, well, dead. And that's the third critical piece of this puzzle, the living soil blueprint. So how do you fix dead soil? The source points to something called the German garden method. It's pretty wild. It uses 10 very specific plants with super deep roots. They act like biological drills, just tunneling their way down to the water table, and then they literally pull that water up, hydrating all the soil around them for your other veggies. And it gets better. You combine that planting method with what's called an 1800s soil hack. Basically, it's about creating a special kind of charcoal to enrich the soil. The end result? Your ground supposedly turns into a living sponge, just soaking up and holding on to incredible amounts of water. All right, now we get to the final piece. And I'll be honest, this is where it gets a little out there. The source calls this the forbidden physics hack. It's a simple little trick that's supposed to supercharge the whole shebang. It's called an earth battery, and it sounds almost too simple. We're talking about just connecting two different kinds of metal in the ground, or even just sticking a copper wire in to act like an antenna. And the claim is that this somehow stimulates the microbes in the soil, gets them all fired up, and makes water more available to your plants.
And the result they claim for this little trick? It's pretty staggering. A 3x increase in your harvest. 3 times. From just a little piece of metal in the ground. I mean, that is a seriously bold claim.
So how does that even work? Well, the proposed theory is that this Earth battery helps align the plant with the Earth's natural electrical frequency. It's a really fascinating explanation for sure. Very unconventional, but that's what's in the text.
So, when you put it all together, the Roman water pumps, the German soil methods, these Earth batteries, you're left with this big question, right? Are we looking at the actual forgotten blueprints for real self-sufficiency, or is this just a collection of really interesting, maybe quirky footnotes from history? It's definitely something to think about.